In a busy coral market where colors flashed like flags, a small crab named Pico spent his mornings racing bubbles. He had a tiny body and quick claws, and he never walked in a straight line. He loved to zigzag through stalls of polished shells and strings of sea glass. Vendors called to each other in bright clicks. Shrimp swept the paths. Parrotfish traded bits of coral for shiny stones. Pico did not trade. He liked to find his own treasures. One day he squeezed beneath a rusted ship beam and felt something round under the sand. A smooth sphere rolled into the light. It was the size of a large marble and too perfect to be a pebble. It glowed very softly. Pico tapped it and laughed. A perfect ball at last. He rolled it across the sand and chased it between coral legs. The sphere moved straight and true. He did a little victory dance that made the shrimp giggle. All morning he played with it. He launched it up a ridge and let it fall into a spiral shell, then popped it out again with a flick. A line of sea snails gathered to watch. Pico set up a tiny course and showed them how to knock the ball around the turns. When Pico rolled his prize through the market, many fish smiled, but some laughed. A round rock, they said. A crab with a toy. Pico only grinned wider and kept playing. That night the reef went quiet. The market darkened to soft blue. Pico tucked himself under a coral arch with his round treasure close. As he drifted towards sleep, he felt the sphere warm slightly. A faint blue glow appeared inside it. Then came a sound. It was a hum like water breathing. Pico held the sphere to his shell and listened. He heard the slow song of a whale far away, the tiny taps of shrimp, the whisper of sand sliding down a slope. He pulled the sphere away and the sounds faded. He pressed it close again and the ocean returned to his ear. Pico's eyes widened. The ball was not a ball. It was listening. It was hearing the sea and sharing the sound. He named it Pearly. When he whispered the name, the glow inside the sphere grew a little warmer. He slept with Pearly tucked under his claw. The hum soothed him better than any story. In the morning he brought Pearly to the market. When he rolled Pearly with delight, the light inside brightened. When a vendor argued, the glow cooled to a pale white. When a child fish cried, the sphere turned tender and warm. Pearly was not only hearing sounds, it seemed to feel moods. When Pico patted it to comfort the child fish, the light steadied and the child's eyes calmed. Word spread quickly that Pico's toy was magic. Curious neighbors came to see. At noon a shadow slid over the market. Sand trembled. A giant hermit crab pushed into the plaza with a shell that lipped like a broken jug wrapped in chains. He was Trax, the collector. He gathered rare things. Trax's eyes fixed on Pearly at once. "Nice little marble," he said low. "Worthless in the wrong claws." He set a cracked gem on the sand. "Trade." Pico shook his head. "Not for trade." Trax clicked. He placed 2 more gems. "Not for trade," Pico repeated. Trax's eyes cooled. He nodded and slid back into the crowd. That afternoon Pico taught a new game to the snails. When they rolled Pearly, the sphere glowed a playful gold. The vendors laughed. Pico felt light in his shell. He did not see Trax circle the market's outer edge. As evening fell, Pico gathered Pearly and started home. Trax stepped from the shadow of a pillar and blocked the path. He snapped once. Pearly flew from Pico's claw. Trax caught it, tucked it into his jug shell, and turned away fast. Pico lunged and grabbed one chain. But Trax shook him off. As Pearlie vanished, the market changed. The hum of the place dropped into a low, uneasy tone. A faint headache throbbed. Vendors paused. The coral seemed to tighten. Pico felt the change and knew it was wrong. Pearlie had been balancing the sea. Now the sound felt bent. Pico ran. He sprinted after the dragging tracks of the jug. The path led into a tight canyon of coral where only small bodies could move fast. Pico followed. He heard Pearlie hum inside the jug, a small pulse calling for balance. He chased the sound. Tracks clanged ahead, always just out of reach. They reached an old ship rib lodged across the canyon. Tracks pushed under it. Pico could not fit with the jug blocking the gap. He climbed the rib. As he pulled himself over the top, his foot slipped. He clung with one claw. Below, Tracks dragged Pearlie into a low tunnel and disappeared. Pico dropped to the sand. A thin crack ran along the canyon wall. Too small for Tracks, big enough for Pico. He squeezed into it and hurried in the dark. He followed Pearlie's pulse through the stone and popped out ahead of the tunnel mouth just as Tracks emerged. Pico leapt onto the jug and rattled its chains. Tracks roared and shook himself. Pico slipped, but felt Pearlie's surface for a heartbeat. The sphere was hot and bright. It wanted to release the sound. Pico landed, dizzy but sure. He backed up 2 steps, then charged. He crashed his body into the jug with a bang. Tracks stumbled. The jug tilted. Pearlie rolled to the lip. Pico dove and caught the sphere with both claws. Trax's claw came down fast. Pico rolled, hugged Pearlie to his chest, and shot under the ship rib. Pico scuttled through the small crack again, then sprinted for the market. The path back felt wrong. The hum of the place dragged into a growl. Pico pressed Pearlie to his shell and whispered. The sphere warmed and glowed. The sound eased a little. Pico moved faster. Tracks burst from a side canyon and thundered after them. Pico reached the open plaza and cut into the shell arcade. He knocked a wind line so 100 shells chimed. He dropped under a counter. Tracks scraped through and smashed the counter to splinters. A cloud of sand whirled as if the market had lost its balance. Pico slid beneath the rusted chip beam. He tucked into the tightest space and held the sphere close. The hum grew rich and low. Pico knew what to do. Pearlie wanted a place where its sound could carry clean and even. Pico ran for the high arch at the center of the market. It was a strong coral fan that sang when touched by current. He climbed its spine. Tracks crashed into the plaza below. At the top of the arch, Pico set Pearlie in a shallow bowl. Pico pressed one claw to its surface. Please, he whispered. Pearlie's light rose to a warm gold. The hum became a tone, low and steady. It rolled across the plaza and outward through the market's bones. Things shifted. Nets relaxed. Shell wind lines chimed the same note. The coral fan answered with a clean ring. The reef calmed. Tracks charged the arch. Before he reached it, the elders moved. A wall of vendor carts rolled across the base. Shrimp jammed the wheels. Parrotfish shoved broken beams. Snails lined up in a stubborn row. Tracks had to lift his heavy shell, which slowed him just enough. Pico stood high on the arch. Pearlie sang through the stone, and the stone sang back. Tracks pushed and pushed, but at last he stopped, staring up through the glow. The market looked awake. Tracks clicked once in anger, then backed away. He turned and pushed his jug shell out of the plaza. He was strong, but he could not bend a song that the whole reef had chosen to hold. He left. The plaza stood in a hush. Then everyone exhaled at once. Vendors cheered. Snails wiggled. Pico sagged against the coral and laughed with relief. He hugged Pearly. The sphere's light softened. After that day, Pico changed the way he treated Pearly. He built a small seat for it under the high arch, lined with soft moss. He tied tiny wind lines so the arch could sing with it. Pearly helped tune the market. In the morning it glowed pale pink. At midday it turned clear and cool. At night it warmed and hummed low, so even the noisiest stools slept. Creatures began to visit to listen. If a school had argued, they sat beneath the arch and their fins settled. The market learned to treat sound like a garden. It was tuned. Pico still played, but the games changed. He rolled small pebbles down sandpaths in time with the archer's song, and taught snails to keep rhythm. He learned how to listen with his claws. Some afternoons Tracks appeared at the edge of the market and watched. He never tried for Pearly again. When he passed the arch, he paused and tilted his head. The hum reached into his shell. He moved on with a slower scrape. On the day the whales returned, a long shadow fell over the plaza. The whale's song joined Pearly's hum and the arch's ring. The market felt like a single instrument. Pico stood on the arch and listened. He did not own the sound. He cared for it. He told the young that treasures are not always for throwing or hiding. Some are for keeping in the open where they work best. Sometimes, very late, Pearly brightened without being touched. Pico would wake to the soft glow and lift the sphere. The hum would carry the whole ocean to his ear. He would whisper thank you and set Pearly back in its seat. The market never forgot the day the sound bent and then straightened. It stayed tuned. If trouble came, the arch sang first. If joy came, the arch sang louder. And at the center of it all was a small crab who once found a round thing and thought it was a ball. Now, when anyone asked Pico what Pearly was, he answered with a grin and a tap on the coral. Pearly listens, he said. Pearly holds the song. And when they asked what he was, he said, I am the keeper of the tune. Then he hurried off to adjust a wind line, because the market was open, the ocean was humming, and some treasures are best shared in the middle of everything.